Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. It is Friday, and you know what it means. It means that it is time for you to ask your questions. That's right. It's Ask the Experts. So whether you're dating, in a committed courtship, engaged, married, single, on the verge of divorce, whatever your relational state may be, it is your opportunity to ask your question so that you can get the answer that you've been looking for. So, listen, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. And we'll jump right into this conversation on the other side of this. Stay right there. Good morning, everyone. You're watching the Couples Academy show. It's Ask the Experts. We're going to dive right in. A question came through my phone, and it was about the fact that they've been dating for 3 years. They're transitioning into marriage, but they're just so different. It seems like they're on different pages. They're not sure if they should move forward because their partner is so incredibly different than they are. What should they do? I think this is a very good question because oftentimes you hear this type of situation on the other side of I do. Oftentimes people feel like, man, I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't think we're on the same page. We've kind of fallen out of love because my spouse thinks differently than I do. The way they handle situations is differently than the way that I would handle it. And we just don't seem to be in sync and in alignment. And what I would simply say to that is, well, guess what? You knew your spouse was different than you when you said I do. You knew your partner was different than you when you started dating. It was those differences that drew you in, that attracted you. And what happens is the things that you're drawn to in the beginning of a relationship oftentimes becomes the things that become the major source of your frustration. And you weren't designed to be just like your partner, nor your partner you. There is something true to the idea that opposites attract. In fact, compatibility isn't being just like your partner. You want there to be differences. You want them to think different. You want them to have a different perspective. You want each partner to have their own individuality and their own self-expression so that they can bring something uniquely different to the relationship. How boring would it be if you were just alike? What would you bring into each other's lives? What new and what different would you experience together? If you're just like the person that you're with, it can get kind of boring. And so there's something unique and there's something powerful about handling things differently. And so oftentimes couples who have an understanding of who their partner is at the core really begin to see the value that they add. And so this is why we do something called the Enneagram Personality Assessment, because with that, you gain a better understanding, awareness, and appreciation for the unique differences and how bringing somebody into your life can advance you and elevate you as a person. And so that's what I would say to you. If you're planning to get into a committed relationship, maybe it's time for you to get some counseling and to have a third party kind of navigate you through what these differences are and figure out how you can make it work in your relationship. Now, we say this all the time. Sometimes there are problems that need to be solved, but sometimes there are just tensions to be properly managed. There's certain things about your partner that will absolutely never change. And either you can look at it as a source of frustration, or you can look at it as, maybe this represents balance and the thing that I need in order for us as a couple to get to a better place. When I think about Danielle, she is completely different than me in many, many, many respects. I bring things into her life, she brings things into mine, but if she was just like me, or if I was just like her, then there would be some limitations, if you will, in major areas of growth and opportunity that we couldn't do together because we're just alike. And so I think it's about looking at this from a different perspective to help elevate you to a level of your relationship that you've never been at before. Hope that makes sense. But for all of you who have questions, post your question. What's on your mind? What's on your heart? What are the things that you're struggling with? What are the questions that you would like answers to? What are the solutions to, we're here to give you the solutions to the problems that you're facing, but you've got to be able to share it. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to another quick commercial break and give you an opportunity to post your question. And if you don't, then we're going to say, have a great weekend. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
All right, guys, welcome back. It is Ask the Experts. Another great question just came in from Gracefully Rachel. She says, what if you found out about infidelity before becoming engaged, and how do you move forward? This is a phenomenal question. Oftentimes people find out after the fact instead of before the fact. And so now you're able to enter into marriage with your eyes wide open. To me, what a blessing to know what has occurred before you get engaged. Now, let me just say, there's something called premarital counseling, but there's something called pre-engagement counseling. For many people who do premarital counseling, it's almost like they've made the decision, they've got the date, they've got everything set, and it's just a formality. They're going through premarital because that's what you're supposed to do. But when it's pre-engagement counseling, you're trying to figure out, is this something that I actually want to take to the next level? Because when you consider the 4 seasons of a successful relationship, you have the dating season, committed courtship, then engagement, then marriage. Each season comes with a different level of responsibility and expectation. So if you're in the committed courtship season, seems like that's where you are, and you're about to get engaged and you just found out that your partner was unfaithful. Now it's time to get the necessary help. Now we need to push pause and we need to have some serious conversations, and we have to evaluate. This is what I would say. Whoever a person is before I do is exactly who he or she's going to be after I do. Whatever the state and nature and quality of your relationship was before I do, that's exactly what it's going to be after I do. Nothing's going to change because you've now shifted into a different season of your existing relationship. And so what does that tell us? That means that in order to secure and in order to ensure that we have a happy, successful, mutually beneficial relationship, there's got to be significant changes that need to take place in a person's life and in the relational dynamic. So if that were me and I found out that there was some infidelity and we're considering engagement, then counseling is a requirement. It is a non-negotiable. Because in addition to understanding what life with someone will be like, right? So you need those foundational things for a relationship in general. We need to address this issue. Because if we don't properly address it, what will keep it from happening again? And oftentimes when we're doing private marriage intensives, one of the questions that we ask, has there been any previous infidelity that has taken place? And oftentimes the answer is yes. Either it happened in the beginning of the relationship several years ago, or it happened prior to I do. And so the question that I always ask, whether in my mind or in the conversation, is, well, what made you move forward? What made you continue to enter into this marriage? What changed? Did you go through a process? Did you go through counseling? Did you address? Did you resolve? And oftentimes, either A, people do not, and they kind of get over it, move past it, and figure that things will be different when you get married. And what I will say is things do not get easier or necessarily better because you get married. If there are problems beforehand, those problems can really get bigger and larger after I do. I'm telling you. So I would say get into some good counseling. Let somebody guide you through a process, get to the root of the issue, understand the why, and figure out what issues need to be addressed in the relationship, but also what issues need to be addressed within the individual who did it in the first place. So getting to the core of the why allows you to then build a wall of protection around yourself and around your relationship to prevent it from ever happening again. So that's what I would say. Don't just move on and just quickly forgive and assume that, well, we weren't in a committed relationship. Once we get into a committed relationship, things will change. If you remember the movie The Best Man, I remember they were playing a card game. And in the midst of that conversation before getting married the next day, one of them said, marriage is the cure to promiscuity. And everybody started laughing because they knew how ridiculous the statement was. And it is not a cure to promiscuity. It is not a cure to infidelity. It is not a cure to bad character. It will maximize who you really are and what issues you're really dealing with. So if there are any existing issues before I do everything that you can to invest in your relationship and solving it. Now listen, last point on this. The average wedding, can cost anywhere between $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Yet people will gripe over having to spend money to invest in their marriage, to invest in their relationship. So they put more time, more energy, more effort to a wedding day than money, time, energy, and effort to focusing on the day after the marriage. So when you invest in your marriage, in your relationship, you will receive such a return on that investment that it will be worth it. So hope that answers the question. Here's another question from Prince of Petty. How does one fix something after infidelity that seems unfixable? Some days its things are good, and some days divorce is on the table. A constant back and forth, if you will. I appreciate the question. Prince of Petty, you've been a faithful viewer, and I appreciate you. I don't really know much about your situation, so I'm going to ask a question that you can answer or not. Are you in any type of counseling process? Are you working with anyone? Or are the two of you just doing it alone and by yourself? I've given this example countless times, but if you think about a plane, when a plane takes off, like I'm about to get on a plane in a few days from Atlanta to another state. How does it get to its final destination? There's a radar system. There's a navigation system. There is something guiding the plane. And so the plane is constantly making course corrections throughout that entire journey to get to its destination. Without a proper navigation system, that plane steers off and will wind up anywhere. And so likewise, on your journey to recovery, do you have a guide? Do you have a system, a navigation system? Do you have somebody taking you on a journey to get you to your final destination? If you're doing it on your own, if you've refused counseling, if she's not interested in counseling, then your journey is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very bumpy. There will be lots of turbulence, and you may not get to where you're trying to go. Does that make sense? And so there's got to be a willingness to not just go to counseling, but then, check this out. Do what the counselor or do what the process is guiding you to do. I just did a private marriage intensive, and literally, sometimes you come down, or couples come down, and they're both open to a process. They both want the marriage. Sometimes there's a lot of internal resistance. And in 3 days, we can do some incredible things as long as you have two willing participants who are coachable and teachable. But if one of the two, or if both are completely resistant, don't trust the process, fight and question everything, a lot of time is lost, and what could have been done in that period of time won't be done. And so it's not just about going to counseling. We talk about this all the time. It's not just about reading a book. It's not just about going to a seminar or a retreat. It's not just about listening to a sermon. That's not the work. The work is doing what those things tell you to do. And when you do them, listen, you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. Outside of that, anything will seem irreparable. Anything could seem like it cannot be fixed. Anything could seem like it's a great impossibility. So I like how you use the word seems, all caps, in parentheses, because I think that's the operative word here. It seems unfixable. And that's based upon the perception or the lens that you are looking through. But all things are possible. All things are possible. And that's where we specialize in dealing with great difficulties to help you through. All right, I think there's a continuation. I'm looking for a couples therapist, shopping around. I'm in my own therapy for a mental thing, but she has verbalized, she thinks it won't work, she won't get over it. Okay, Principality. So, what I would say to you is, you tune into a show hosted by Infidelity recovery specialist. You tune into a show hosted by Couples Academy, who has a team of practitioners all over the country who are marriage coaches, who specialize in affair recovery and divorce prevention. What are you shopping for? What are you shopping for? We're right here. Our number's been down on the screen. We've answered a lot of your questions. We've been there to support you. What are you shopping for? What are you looking for in the practitioner that you choose to work with? And if we're not a good fit, let me give you some guidance on where you should go and what questions you should ask to see who's qualified to help you through your journey. But how long have you been looking? Okay? What else have you done in the midst of looking? Have you done all the other things that I said wouldn't work if you just did those things alone? You have to implement what those things are. Yeah, my therapist was trying to get her involved. It wasn't going anywhere. You guys were actually my next bet. All right, well, dude, let's set up a discovery call. And let me just say, listen, many of you have wonderful therapists that you work with individually. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're qualified to guide you through a couples process. It depends upon what their background is and what their specialty is. If they're a mental clinician, if they're a licensed therapist that deals with, depression and emotional stability and things of that nature, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily equipped to work with couples who are going through marital challenges. And if you've been working with a therapist for quite some time, that therapist, and I'm sure that therapist is professional, but your spouse may feel as if that therapist is biased to you. So she may want to start with someone new that can kind of hear both of your narratives fresh and unbiased so that you get the help that you need. So hopefully that makes sense. Jewel saying, is she watching the show with him? That's a very good question, Jewel. Is she watching this show with you? Because what a great opportunity for her to get a deep dive into who we are, what we believe, and how we approach things, so that it builds up her level of confidence in our ability to help. It's so interesting. A lot of times when people actually come to us, they say, we've been watching you for the last 5 years. And I'm like, 5 years? You've been watching? Well, we appreciate you for the commitment. We appreciate you for the longevity and being a part of the community. But why did it take 5 years for you to begin a process? And so sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's finances, sometimes it's people being on the same page. And what I would say is, listen, reach out to us. For all those who are going through in any respect, this is what we're here for. What other questions do you have? We want to be able to answer your questions and give you exactly what you need. So maybe you're in a relationship right now, you want it, your spouse does not want it. This is the advice that I would tell you. Do what Prince of Petty is doing, because at least Prince of Petty is getting help for himself. And oftentimes a spouse will wait to do anything until their partner is on board. And that's the wrong move to make. Oftentimes that hurt, betrayed spouse is looking to see what the former unfaithful spouse is doing. Okay? When he or she takes the lead in a journey of healing and recovery, oftentimes a spouse will get on board. So for all of you who are vacillating back and forth, is it worth doing? Should I invest the time, energy, and effort? Will it make a difference? It will absolutely make a difference, because it only takes one person to initiate a process. And what happens is when you do that, you're creating some type of momentum, and it's almost like you're stirring. It's just like you're stirring the pot, and then it's an opportunity for your wife to get on board because momentum has been created. Prince of Petty, one more comment. Honestly, I sent her the link to a live show before. She didn't bring it up, so I don't know if she watched it really, so I didn't bring it up either. So here's the reality. Let me just help you, Prince of Petty, and all of you who are watching right now. A lot of times, because there's tension, because the environment isn't conducive, so we may think for connection, we take a very timid, passive approach to our spouse. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to us to do discovery calls because they want marriage counseling. So the first question I ask is your spouse also interested in marriage counseling? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm like, well, did you ask? No, I didn't. Why are we on the phone? So if you don't know if your spouse is interested because you haven't asked the question, how can you get marriage counseling if your spouse is unaware? In that case, the only one who would be getting help is you. So either you're seeking individual counseling or marriage counseling. If you're seeking individual counseling, you don't need your spouse's buy-in because it doesn't deal with your spouse, it deals with you. But if you want marriage counseling, you have to broach the topic. There's no easy way to do it. There's no perfect way to do it. It may not work. It may backfire. So you have to choose multiple ways to get the message out. I tell people all the time, I can help you craft what language you can begin to express and articulate to your spouse to get them on board, but it may not work. It may not work. So it's just like martial arts. You don't just learn one punch. You learn different punches, different kicks, different combinations. You learn different things to address the particular situation you're dealing with. And likewise, there's no one way, there's no perfect way. So if it doesn't work one way, you try another way. I remember years ago working with a bunch of gentlemen. One of them was very military-minded. And the assignment was, listen, Brother James, I need you to reach out to Brother Craig. And you got a week to do it. And he said, no problem, I'll reach him. A week later, we get back in the meeting. Did you reach out to Brother Craig? Yeah, no. I mean, I tried, but it didn't work. And he said, well, did you call him? Yeah, I called him. He didn't pick up. Did you leave a voicemail? No, you didn't leave a voicemail. Well, did you call him back? I never Mm-mm. Did you email him? I didn't. Did you text him? You know what? I texted him, but I never got a response. Well, you know where he lives, right? Did you knock on his door? Did you go to his house and knock on his door? No. Well, you didn't knock on his door. Did you look through the window to the house that you didn't go to see if he was there? Did you see if there was a car in the driveway? Did you go around the back of the house? The whole point was, there are multiple ways to get to a person. But because you didn't get the response that you were looking for or hoping for initially, you threw in the towel, you called it quits, you gave up, you stopped pursuing because you made certain assumptions in your pursuit, probably because of your own fear, your own insecurity, your own limited beliefs and conversations you're having with yourself, the story you're telling yourself, and so you tap out rather than doing what you have to do to get the message to Brother Craig. In this case, Brother Craig is your spouse. And so if you haven't exhausted all means and measures to get the message out, to inquire to see if they're interested in counseling, then you haven't done enough work. How bad do you want what you say that you want? If you're not willing to do these necessary things, you are not ready. Derek asked the question, how to communicate with a single-minded person, meaning the way they view anything is set in stone. They don't take the time to understand your point. They will argue you down, telling how you're wrong. Yes, I get that. So here you are wanting to engage a spouse. They have tunnel vision. They have one way of seeing things. They have a particular perspective that is very closed and limiting. It is very difficult to deal with a person like that. And so it seems as though they're not open, they're not teachable, they're not coachable. But if they are, I'm always going to say counseling because you have a third person or third party who can really help have conversations with that person in a way that you cannot, right? So there's something called iceberg communication. And when you think about an iceberg, the smallest part of the iceberg is what you see above the sea level. But then the largest piece is beneath the water. You can't see it. And so you wonder, why is it that we struggle communicating? Why is this thing so hard? Why is it so difficult? It's not because of what you're experiencing above the sea level. It's the huge mass beneath it. And oftentimes, the reason why we struggle to communicate is because there's disappointments and frustrations and situations that have happened in the past, unresolved issues, there's faulty assumptions, right? There's our own internal conversations that we're having with ourselves, which are different than the ones that we're having with our partner. So there's a lot of individual stuff and relational stuff historically that has made communicating with our spouse very difficult. But then you bring in another person who doesn't have that same shared history, who can have a conversation with your spouse with relative ease in ways that you cannot. And that's why when bringing a third party in can be beneficial, because they can sometimes broach conversations and get to issues in ways that you can't, but they're there to facilitate and navigate a process to allow you to address issues that you cannot do on your own. And so that's what would be my encouragement. But in the meantime, there's phenomenal books that you can get. One of the best books ever written on communication is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It gives you nothing but techniques on how to properly engage an individual, particularly if that individual is being difficult. So hopefully that helps. Kimberly says, good morning, Couples Academy family. Why are so many marriages dissolving during a man's midlife crisis? Wow. Yeah, so when a man is going, or a woman is going through a midlife crisis, they begin to question everything. Really, it's an identity crisis. Who am I? What do I really want? They begin to assess themselves through a particular lens. They look at their age, they look at what they've accomplished, they look at their relational status. Is this what I want anymore? Is this what I've ever wanted? So they begin to question themselves, their situation, and their circumstances. And oftentimes, in that identity crisis phase, they begin to venture off and do things that are compromising to themselves and to their relationship. And oftentimes, after such unrepentant bad behavior, the relationship cannot sustain itself because one of the two or neither of the two are willing to do the necessary work to bring about that change and transformation. And so we find that this is very, very, very prevalent. We did a series on the midlife crisis or the midlife affair some time ago, and it may be worth bringing that back because I think that most people don't understand what this crisis is and what impact that it has on a person's life and relationship. But it'd be worth an exploration. The reason why these relationships dissolve is either because the person having the midlife crisis gets to the point where they say, I don't want it anymore. I want something new. I want something different. And I'm not willing to work. I'm not willing to stay. And so therefore, it dissolves the marriage. Or in some cases, they are willing to do the work because they realize the damage that they've done, but their spouse may be too far hurt to want to begin a process. Or, third option, a lot of people stay. Because the idea of leaving, I mean, we've known each other all of our lives. It's almost like there's this oneness concept that happens when you get married, when you've been married a long time. And even though I don't like you, I still love you, but I don't like you. And so it would be easier to stay together and be emotionally disconnected than to have to start life all over again by myself. So there's certain relationships where the marriage legally, technically still exists, but the relationship has dissolved within the framework of the marriage. And so it's just a horrible place to be in, and that's why we're here to give you that level of guidance and help. All right, I think this may be the last one. Ready Player None. How do you mourn the idea or value of one and only when one partner has external experience post-affair when both spouses were each other's first? Okay, I'm going to read that again. I need to understand the question. How do you mourn the idea or value of one and only when one partner has external experience post-affair when both spouses were each other? I got it. Okay. Yeah. So if I'm hearing this correctly, when you two got together, you were each other's only. And then there was an affair. And so you no longer am my only. I am no longer your only. I get it. Because now there's been another person introduced into the relationship through an affair. And so there's a loss. Yeah. That's, this is what makes betrayal so complex, because it lands differently for each person based upon the relational dynamic, right? This is what we would call death by 1,000 cuts. And so in this particular situation, when all you knew was each other, and now you have something or you've experienced something that the other hasn't, it may be harder to heal from that than a couple where they've had previous partners, okay, and maybe they've both been unfaithful. And so people live life through a lens of comparison oftentimes. And that's where people remain stuck, and that's where their brokenness lives, in the comparison. And so the reality is it comes through a process. When you're working with a practitioner that can help begin to change the thinking and help begin to see through a different lens, it will help you in that healing process. So if I could just be quite honest, there's the affair recovery work, there is the marital recovery work, but then there is the individual work. And a lot of times, our struggle in this relationship is based upon my individual internal hang-ups, hiccups, struggles, ways of thinking, fears, insecurities. It's what's going on with me that keeps me blocked and keeps me from healing, which ultimately impacts us. So you have to know how to properly navigate through those conversations. The full disclosure is a conversation that for some couples happens in a season of their recovery process. And it takes ongoing conversations to make things make sense. And so what we find is that when couples are having these conversations on their own, oftentimes they get stuck. They really get stuck. But being a practitioner that can now hear the answer can possibly re-articulate it in a way that the partner can receive it in order for them to have a mental, emotional breakthrough to begin to move forward in that recovery process. And so that's what I would encourage all of you to do. Also, watch these videos with your spouse. Until you're ready to move forward, that's one thing that you can do. Watch them together, have great conversations about it, And in the meantime, bring your conversations in. Bring your spouse to the platform. Have them ask questions too, as Jewel mentioned earlier. And when you begin to do that, all things begin to change. Listen, guys, hope that was helpful. Hope you have an amazing weekend. It is Mother's Day weekend. Do something special for your wives. Do something special for your mother. We'll talk about it on Monday. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Take care.